You ready, baby?
So, welcome to the meeting, the monthly meeting of the Nottingham Zoning Board of Adjustment. And we will be having, is it 3 public hearings tonight?
Yes.
We have a busy night ahead of us. So, I'm going to, first of all, take a look at my agenda. We all kind of slid in late here tonight, thanks to the weather and other factors. Okay. First of all, I'll introduce the members of the board. Kevin Bassett. I'm Bonnie Winona McKinnon, and this is Raylene Shippey Rice. We have, the vice chairman is missing tonight, Teresa Bascom, as is Peter White. Is there someone else missing?
Terry Bonser.
Terry Bonser is away. So for those of you who are applicants, this means we do not have a full board, and you have the right to request that we put the hearing off another month. It'll be entirely up to you. Obviously, if you need 3 votes, and there are 5 people here, your odds of getting 3 votes are higher than if there are 3 people, just statistically. I mean, I have no idea how any of these people are going to vote, so that decision will be yours, but that's your right. If you wish to wait for a full board, we have a combination of factors here tonight, family emergencies, and Terry, who's almost never away, is away, and I guess Peter felt he couldn't get here because of the weather. He lives on a private road, and perhaps it wasn't plowed. But anyway, we usually have a full board, not always, but usually, and I don't think I've ever seen one with only 3 people here, so. How is that going to impact your case? That's a question that Stephanie?
Well, since none of my neighbors are here, if I was sitting there, I might opt to postpone.
Might.
I might, if I was sitting there.
Well, if we have only 2 people to vote on it, we can't hear it anyway, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that makes sense.
But anyway. You have this,
I have this.
yes, and this pertains to your case, so you might see that it's likely you're going to be dismissed anyway, but we still need a quorum to do it.
I haven't read this yet, but, okay.
Okay, so when you get a chance, you'll see. Okay, so we have 3 public hearings tonight, and I like to go over the general rules for public hearings for those of you in the audience, just so that you know what our procedures are. So I will call the hearing in session, so I'll do that if I remember case by case. And the members of the board may ask questions at any point during testimony. Each person who appears shall be required to state their name and address and indicate their affiliation to the case. The first person up will be the applicant, who's ever presenting for the applicant. Any member of the board, through the chairperson, may request any party to the case to speak a second time, like they might have more questions that came up after you left the table. Any party to the case who wants to ask a question of another party to the case must do so through the chairperson, so you have to ask me to ask them. The applicant shall be called to present their case, and those abutters in favor shall be allowed to speak. So that will be the order. The applicant, I don't see a lot of abutters out there. Those abutters in opposition shall be allowed to speak after those in favor, and the board will hear any evidence that pertains to the case from other parties that wish to speak. So if other people show up from the public, we will listen to them as well. The applicant and those in favor shall be allowed to speak in rebuttal, and then those in opposition shall be allowed to speak in rebuttal. The chairperson shall present a summary setting forth the facts of the case and the claims made for each side, with opportunity given for correction from the floor. So if you don't like my summary, you can comment on it. The hearing shall be declared closed, and then the board will deliberate and approve or disapprove immediately, or we can wait 30 days, up to 30 days, to vote. We typically vote in this meeting. But we have 30 days to make that decision if we want it. Sometimes we want more information from experts who might not be here. So the board shall decide all cases within 30 days of the close of the public hearing and shall approve with conditions, or deny the application or appeal. Notice of the decision will be mailed to the applicant and be made available for, my page ended in the middle of a sentence. Anyway,
For public.
it'll be on the town website, is I think what it's getting to. So it'll be available for the public to view as well. This is an open public meeting. Okay, moving on to tonight's agenda. As I find it in here. Okay. The first case is case number 19-014-VA X3. An application from Lucas Adams for a variance request from Article 2C2, items D, E, and J, to permit an existing ADU to remain in use as is detached, 860 square feet, and neither the primary structure or the ADU are occupied by the owner. The property is located at 228 Stage Road in Nottingham, New Hampshire, and is identified as tax map 29, lot 5. So will the applicant please come to the table, state your name, your address, and so forth for the record, and try to speak into the microphone so the people in the audience, in the TV audience, can hear you.
Okay. My name is Lucas Adams. I live at 13 Northrop Drive in Brentwood, New Hampshire. I am the executor of the estate of Bernard Adams. The property in question was my father's.
Madam Chair, should we ask if he wants to continue? Is that formal, or?
Have you not done this before? Probably not.
I have never done this before.
Okay, so we ask you to present your case to the board verbally.
Okay.
If you have any diagrams, documents, surveys that you want to show us, you may do so. But you must convince us that you meet the requirements for a variance, which are those 5 criteria on your application. So we ask that you go over that and either read them to us, read them and elaborate. You don't have to. However you wish to present the case, it's up to you.
Okay.
And you do want to go forward with the meeting with a 3-member board?
Do I have to decide that now?
Yes.
Okay. So I would.
Pardon? Oh, no, at any time before we vote, you can decide.
Anytime before we vote,
So
Okay.
you can
you
take,
can
So can you clear? So
say, please postpone.
So I would need, if I understood what you said earlier correctly, I would need all 3 of you
Correct.
to agree, or if I were to postpone it, I would need 3 out of how many people were here?
normally, a full board is 5 people.
Okay,
And we don't have 5 people tonight for a variety of crazy reasons, unusual reasons, more than crazy. So that is your right to have a full board, but it would delay you. That's,
okay,
so the decision is yours. You may continue and kind of see if you can guess how we're feeling from the questions we ask or the faces we make or whatever.
okay. I guess I'll continue for now and make that decision before you vote then. Okay, so the land that's in question here is, it's an ADU that was built several years ago. It was built by my father as instructed by the building inspector at that time. So the answer to the first question is the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. The ADU was built several years ago. It was connected to the main house as instructed by the building inspector at that time. After my father passed away and I tried to sell the house, I learned that the permit for the ADU was not a permit for an ADU. The permit was for a barn.
So, for a barn.
Yes,
So it's not connected to the house?
it is not connected as I forget which of the subsections of the articles, but there's a structure connecting the porches, which is what the building inspector told him at that time he needed to do. The wording, I believe, of the regulation says that it needs to be a door. So it does not meet that
Yeah, but that's a
criteria.
recent change, I believe, isn't it, Joanna? That was an addition, I think, just last year. So if it was
Oh.
done before that change, and that was allowable then,
It was built as instructed by the building inspector at that time. I don't know when the regulations changed.
I do. I mean, it
Okay.
was either last year or the year, it was last year, wasn't it? Joanna's on the planning board, too. Within the last year, possibly.
It was built well before the last year.
Yeah. So was it built before the ADU ordinance legislation was even passed?
I don't know. I don't know when the
You know what year it
legislation
was
was
built?
passed. Yes, it was built in 2011.
It's probably close to it. I don't really know when it was. I know it was legislation passed by the state in recent history, but for me, that can be a lot of years. So they all run together.
Do we need to look that up? I mean, do we need to know?
Not really. But I have a question as to, you're asking for a variance to turn it into a ADU by what? Adding on to it?
No, I just want to be able to sell it as is, without having to tear out the ADU. So when I tried to sell the house, the banks involved, of course, checked to make sure that everything was built with the appropriate licenses. And when they did that research, they learned that the building permit for the ADU was not a building permit for an ADU, it was a building permit for a barn.
Was your father's original request for a barn?
Well, originally he wanted to, so a barn had burnt down, and when he built it, between when, this is a guess, I don't know the exact dates, between when he originally submitted the building permit, and then between then and when he actually got the money for the barn that was burnt down from the insurance company, he had changed his plans. And he spoke to the building inspector and said, if I wanted to make this an apartment, what do I need to do? And they said, you have to apply for a building permit for the septic system, which he did, and then the building inspector looked at his plans for the time and told him what changes he would need to make in order to connect them. So he had to change some windows and change the way the porches were going to be laid out so that it would be a legal ADU at that time. And
So just for
But he was
clarification,
never-
before a certain point in time, there was no such thing as an ADU. That's a recent, but before that, we did allow in-law apartments. I don't know if we still do.
well, but
When you're calling it an in-law.
my dad described it as an in-law apartment.
Right, because that was the old way of labeling them.
Okay.
So the point is that there was no reapplication for that structure as an ADU. It still remained a
Well,
garage.
there's certainly no
or
paperwork
barn.
for it, yes.
But I have a question as to whether any is required. If you make a use, Stephanie, that's an allowed use, and then the ordinance changes, you can't go back and apply the ordinance to something that's existing, can you?
That's correct, until a change is made.
But he's not making any changes, he's just saying, the bank talked to the town said, eh. I mean, that's what it sounds like to me.
That is correct.
So the bank requires you to have a statement that's a building permit that says it's an ADU and not a
Yes.
barn.
I think there's, it sounds to me like the chain of information is not clear and probably not correct. If it existed before there were ADUs, there's nothing illegal about it.
How do we find the ADU whenever that went into effect?
I know, I remember, since I've been on this board, it's not that long ago. Martha Fuller Clark got the legislation through the legislature. Do you know, Stephanie?
I don't know.
Off the top of your head?
when it Became Nottingham zoning.
Oh, but you.
When did it
you were-
become, when did the
2017 for.
the legislature?
state statute.
So that's just a couple years ago.
Okay, so you were on the board when that change was made?
Which
And it was
changed?
post-2011, the ADU.
Yeah, it was post, and
was
his thing has been there since
2011.
before
Okay.
2011, right?
It was
And this-
built in 2011.
Built in 2011,
So
so
all
6
this
years
happened
before
before.
the enabling legislation was even passed by this state.
So the bottom line is, it's not an
The bottom line is, I'm wondering why he's here.
Right, that's,
So the bank, I understand that banks need verification that permits have been pulled when things are done.
So when I met with the building inspector last month, to say, okay, you know, the people that were interested in purchasing the land said that they can't because there is no,
Who said they can't?
the bank. And then when I met with the building inspector last month, he agreed. It's like, yeah, you're right, you can't sell it as is, you would have to tear it out. So I said, well, I don't have the money to tear it out. What are my options? And he said, well, then you can apply for a variance, in which case I can grant you a permit for what is there.
So I'm still in a quandary. If there was a permit given for that building, and then there was a permit given for it as a residential unit, as an in-law apartment, I don't think you need to be here. And I think the bank possibly was given wrong information. Does anybody have any conflicting?
well, do you have a document for the apartment?
What do you mean, a document?
I mean, something that says this is a in-law apartment or an ADU or anything like that. And that's what the bank needs, is some kind of a document that says this is,
You know, when I came and spoke to the building inspector, the only thing I was given was a letter of rejection saying that it doesn't meet today's criteria.
saying what?
It doesn't meet the current criteria.
Joanna, could you,
So there is no building permit for the apartment. There's a building permit for a barn.
Right.
There is no certificate of occupancy to prove that the ADU, the apartment, was certified to be lived in. That's why he's here, to get relief from the mess.
So the question is, how do we get
Was
those?
a plan submitted? A
For a
plot
barn.
plan?
For a barn,
But today?
no.
Okay. You mentioned a septic plan. The
Yes.
septic permit was approved.
Yes, the septic permit was approved before it was built.
Was
So is
that-
it currently
Joe, do
two
you know if
bedrooms?
that was, let me have the floor,
I'm
please.
sorry.
Do you know if that was for the house?
No, the house has its own septic. That's just for the apartment.
So there was a septic approved for the apartment,
Yep.
but no occupancy and no AU permit. That's a little,
well, there weren't ADUs
Odd.
back then. There were no ADUs. In 2011, they did not exist. The legislation
Okay.
was passed 2 years ago, maybe 2.5. So, but we did allow in-law apartments back then.
is there any building inspector notes or documentation from 2011?
Just what's in the file, which was the septic system, that was the only indication that the building inspector was aware that there was an apartment being put in. Otherwise, it's the barn application. Other than that, there's no other note. It's not uncommon for that time period to not have any inspection reports or certificate of occupancy tracking.
Okay,
So,
So it's not unusual. But I have a question about the septic system. Is it a separate septic system for that apartment?
Yes, it is.
And it was approved by the state of New Hampshire,
Yes.
which tells me that the building inspector for the town of Nottingham had to sign off on that permit before it was issued, before it was sent to the state. They have to. I know this for a fact.
Yes,
was
that
in the
is,
building
and I
business.
can tell you, I mean, I wasn't there when my dad applied for, or asked the building inspector what needed to happen to make it an in-law apartment. But I know he complained to me about the changes that he had to make as instructed by the building inspector.
To the building, and he had to put in another septic system.
Yep,
And how many bedrooms are in that
one.
it's a one-bedroom unit? To me, the town approved it. Whether the town followed its own procedures properly, I don't see how we can fault the landowner.
but it sounds like he needs a document
That is not our business. The bank, if he needs a document for the bank, we have nothing from the bank saying what they're asking for, and they're not in front of the board anyway. He is.
it'll be coming from the building inspector.
Pardon?
Sorry?
The document will be after if we agree, the building inspector can then,
Right, the building
That's the
inspector can
doc-
take our decision,
That's what I was,
and the bank can hear that it's legal, that's what they want to know.
right, that was my question, whether
So
that was the step to take.
I will say that I had an issue with a neighbor on a property that I own in another town, in which a septic system, a well was placed near my septic system, near the lot line. And the septic system on my property was not properly placed on the guy's plan, and the state of New Hampshire went, when I talked to them. He needed a radius for the well easement from me, and I called DES just to make sure I wasn't shooting myself in the foot. And they went, you can never put a septic system there. I'm like, but there is one there. They said, really? It's not on the plans. And the town building inspector got fired over it, because he signed off on it, and he knew my septic system was there. He made me put it there a few years before. So I know that the town, and I was married to a builder for a long time. Every time you build a new house and you submit a septic design, the town building inspector has to sign it. They have to agree to it. So the town very well knew what you were doing, I say, what your dad was doing.
The town certainly knew.
Yeah, so it's nothing that he did illegally, and therefore, I don't believe you need to be before this board with this issue. Unless, Joanna, you know something.
The only way he can sell it is to help the house.
That's because the town told the bank wrong. That's because the town, Kevin, did you want to say something?
after you.
I mean, I believe that somebody from the bank or the appraiser called the town, and they said that the unit wasn't legal. So it was built before, way before there were ADUs.
So, yeah, I'm here tonight because the building inspector told me that this is what I needed to do. And, my dad filed the permits and made the modifications to his plan many years ago, because that's what the building inspector told him he needed to do. So I'm sorry if I am here and shouldn't be here, but...
No, I'm not, trust me, I'm not chastising you, I'm not. I'm just saying that the bank got their information from the town, and the town is saying, you need this, and I'm saying, I don't think they're right.
Madam Chair, that's conjecture, but if I could have the floor.
Sorry, Kevin, I'm having trouble hearing you.
I'm just asking for the floor.
Oh,
It's
Sorry,
yours.
yeah. Hey, Joe, question?
Yep.
If we approve, what's the building inspector going to do? Is he going to submit a building or an ADU approval?
My understanding is just my notice of decision from the zoning board stating that we acknowledge that things weren't done correctly, however, we approve it with a as-is, detached, with a, Charlotte's attaching it, but detached, what else is it? The size, 860 square feet instead of, what is it, 750.
Right,
750. And it's not owned by, and neither primary structure or ADU are occupied by the owner. Because we're trying to sell it.
Are you reading information that we have in here?
I'm sorry, what are you looking for?
Are you reading information that we have in here?
That's the notice, the public hearing notice, so yeah, that's on your agenda. Those are the reasons why he's here, to get it approved as is, right now.
Okay, so we are voting on the fact that it is detached, and it's smaller in size than an ADU today is allowed.
It's larger.
Larger in size.
Oh, it's larger,
Yeah, not a
okay.
lot, but
Thank
it's a
you.
little bit larger.
Thank you. And neither of the primary structure is presently occupied by the owner, but that's, for
Again,
obvious
in
reasons.
2011, when it was built, it was the primary residence was occupied.
Okay, thank you.
So,
so do we need a motion of anything?
we do, but I had one more thing to just share with Mr. Adams, and that is that Unlike an in-law apartment, an ADU requires that it be on record at the Registry of Deeds forever, which may not bother you or anyone else at all, but it's different than an in-law apartment.
Okay. So are there different regulations for an in-law apartment than an ADU?
There were, I'm not sure if did we take in-law apartment out?
Yeah, I never had that one in there. You have your zoning ordinance in there.
Well, we always allowed a small apartment for your mother-in-law or whatever. It's called an in-law apartment, and it could be rented to anybody. There's no way that the town isn't policing it, but.
It does state that to permit an existing ADU. So the application says that today it's an ADU.
But here's my point that I'm trying to share with him.
Yeah.
I think his application and everything is predicated on false information that the town gave him.
I wasn't debating that, Madam Chair. Getting back, Joe, is that does the building inspector really think that today it's an ADU, based upon the words?
He came and looked at it. Sorry, I know you were.
I was asking.
I'm not sure what you mean by that. It's separate from the structure.
What will it be after we agree? What will it be declared as? Sort of the thread that Bonnie was.
He's asking for an
Madam Chair was trying
ADU,
to-
so that's all we can grant.
Yeah, it would be.
Would it be a formal ADU?
Yes.
And thus your comment about the registry?
Right.
Is true.
It's a change in what the property owner is required to do for the policing of an ADU, where there was no such requirement with an in-law apartment. That's all I'm sharing.
Okay.
Totally your decision. If you want us to rule on whether or not you can have that as an ADU, that's your choice.
Okay.
And I'm just trying to tell you that I think it restricts your rights more than the former, than what was allowed in 2011. Like, I have neighbors all over the place who have little apartments in their house, and they're not ADUs. They're not designated ADUs.
Okay.
So I don't know what the town would tell them if they went to sell their house. I don't know. Anyway, it's a lot to think about, but I think if you know the history of the existence of ADUs, they're really, really new. They're newer than your unit, than when your dad built it.
Okay, yeah, again, my dad called it an in-law apartment. I
Right,
called in
exactly.
ADU in the application because the building inspector came with me to look at it and said, there's no doubt about it, this is an ADU. It just doesn't meet the attachment requirements, and obviously no one lives there anymore, so it doesn't meet the having someone live there requirement. So he couldn't approve it as is.
Do you have a buyer?
I did,
Did they fly?
yes.
Sorry.
Should I,
Madam Chair, just a quick suggestion. If we confirm that he would like to go forward, he could go through the 5 criteria.
Would you like to go forward?
yeah, I think so at this time. Yeah, do you want me to continue with the next one?
Yes.
Okay, so, the next item is that the spirit of the ordinance observed, so the plans for the porches were altered and the construction to connect them was done as instructed by the building inspector in 2011. This does already have its own approved septic, and ADUs are allowed in Nottingham, so it's following the spirit of the ADU ordinance. Section 3, substantial justice is done. Approval of the variance would allow me to fulfill my father's final wishes as outlined in his will. Rejection of the variance would result in the need for me to remove the ADU prior to selling it, which would result in significant cost to me, in a delay, or deal with numerous violations if I attempted to subdivide the property further. Section 4, the values of the surrounding property are not diminished. The apartment has existed for several years already with no negative impact on any of the surrounding properties. Section 5, Little enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardships for the purposes of this paragraph. So, for these sections, I wrote that first, I inherited the property and do not reside in it. My father did reside on the property when the ADU was built, so that is the reason that there was no longer anyone residing in there. The size and the method of connecting it to the primary residence was approved by the building inspector at the time it was built. The proposal of use is a reasonable one. ADUs are allowed in the town of Nottingham. It has been in use for several years before my father passed away. If the criteria are not established, unnecessary hardship would be deemed to exist. So rejection of the variance would result in the need to either, A, remove the existing ADU at a substantial cost to me, or to subdivide the property further, which would be both a substantial cost, and I would be back here for additional variances, as there'd be numerous violations for setbacks.
Hey, I have a question. When, did your father live in both sections?
No, he lived in
ADU, or
the
did
primary
he-
residence, and he had
And
friends
he
staying.
rented the,
Yes, yes.
oh, okay. That wasn't clear that that it was a rental property
Yeah, it
versus
was.
could be a rental property.
Yep.
In apartments and ADUs are probably 80, 90% of them are probably rented.
Pardon?
They're
Oh,
usually
rented.
rented, yeah.
So I think that's the end of the 5 questions.
Okay. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in support of this application? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? There being none, I'm going to declare the public hearing portion closed, and the board will deliberate and vote on the 5 criteria. But we need a motion. Do we do a motion as well? Joanna, yes. Yes. That includes them all. So, does anyone have any questions, further questions, discussion,
I do not.
points to make?
But we need the motion before we vote on the 5.
We should, yes. Because
And the motion should be,
the motion will say what we're approving, or disapproving, either way, but
that we are approving the petition to
it's an application.
the application.
Kevin, do you want to do it? I'm calling on Kevin because it's complicated and he's been around
I
a
will do
long
it.
time.
I will do it. I make a motion to accept the variance request for case 19-014-VAX3 to permit an existing ADU to remain in use as is, detached, 860 square feet, and neither the primary structure of the ADU are occupied by the owner. The property is located at 228 Stage Road in Nottingham, New Hampshire, and is identified as tax map 29, lot 5.
Is there a second?
Second.
Can you hear that, Joanna? Okay, a motion has been made and seconded to approve the application from Lucas Adams for a variance request. And now we're going to vote on this by voting on each of the 5 criteria separately. So if anybody votes against any of them, it'll cack the whole deal. We only have 3 people here. But anyway, just take a deep breath.
Okay.
Okay, the first criteria, that the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. All those who agree with that, raise your right hand. All those opposed? That the spirit of the ordinance is observed. All those who agree with that, raise your right hand. Those opposed? That substantial justice is done. All those who agree, raise your right hand. Those Those opposed? That the values of the surrounding properties are not diminished. All those who agree with that, raise your right hand.
I agree.
All those who oppose? And this is going to be a two-part vote that literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship because no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property. All those who agree with that, raise your right hand. This is going to be actually a three-part vote. That the proposed use is a reasonable one. Those who agree, raise your right hand. And that rejection of the variance would result in a need to either remove the existing building, that if the criteria in subparagraph A are not established, an unnecessary hardship will be deemed to exist. And only if owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, the property cannot be reasonably used in strict conformance with the ordinance, and a variance is therefore necessary to enable a reasonable use of it. All those who agree, raise your right hand.
We don't have to vote on this one because
Because it
A
doesn't,
was,
because A was enough.
yeah.
Seems to me we had that discussion once before, but anyway, I will say the board has voted and you have been granted your variance, sir.
Thank you very, very much.
And I will say again, I don't really think you needed one, honestly. But
Although I do suggest you would get an occupancy permit, and
Yes.
that might be one of the documents the bank is looking for. So
Yeah, well, yes,
They're very probably true.
excellent. Thank you very, very much.
Very welcome. Okay, the next case will be case number 19-014-VAX5. Application from Leslie and Barbara Thompson. Is this the one you're on, Kevin?
Yes, so
Oh.
I need to be excused,
You need to be excused.
so I am excused. I don't know if I need to leave the seat, do I?
I believe you do.
Okay.
I hate to kick you off this table, but I think you're better down there. Are you presenting, Stephanie?
So, so because without him, there's only two of you left, he can sit solely for the purpose of continuing until the next meeting.
Thank you. Kevin, would you take your seat again, please? So, we have an application before us, but one of the applicants is a member of the board. Therefore, he may not sit on the case, except to vote for extending it, is that what we call it? Continuing it to our next hearing. So, I need a motion for that, I suppose.
Or continuing.
We're not going to have a quorum, because
Right.
there's only two of us.
So we are now voting on doing a continuation
Yes,
of
of case number there.
case number,
Probably better if you made the motion, because Kevin is the party to the,
get the case up here. Where's the case number?
it's right on here. Zoning board, the agenda.
Oh,
If Teresa were here.
case
she would-
number 19-014-VAX5. To continue to the next meeting of the zoning board of adjustment.
Do I have a second? Can he second it? Apparently.
I can?
I'll second it, I'll second
Yeah, I
it.
was gonna say,
All those in favor of continuing this case, please raise your right hand. I think you have to vote on this. Oh, no, he can abstain. Thank you.
I abstain.
The case is hereby continued. Now you have to stay for the next case. Case number 19-013-VA. Application from Jeff Speck for a variance request from Article 2, C2 of the Nottingham Zoning Ordinance to permit the reconstruction of a new house where the existing house is setback, where the existing house's setback is 15.2 feet, and the new house will be set back 10.3 feet, where a 20-foot setback is required. The property is located at 65 Lakeview Drive in Nottingham, New Hampshire. is identified as tax map 71, lot 37. Do we have an applicant? You, Chris? You're welcome. We'll bring that up close where we can see your matters.
Knowing the situation of tonight, I think I'll discuss the project and take some comments and decide whether or not I want to continue.
Okay, good strategy.
It's usually my rule of thumb to pass the
Sometimes
pass the
people
project
are-
along.
Yes.
Again, for the record, my name is Christopher Albert from Jones and Beach Engineers. I'm a wetland scientist and septic designer and represent Mr. Speck for the project. Again, this is a project that I've been working with the Specks since 2015. So again, it's something that, again, without a full board tonight, meeting another month is not going to end the world. Just to kind of let everybody know where we are. And this is part of the Lake Shore Drive development from 1959. It's a 0.65 acre lot, 65 acre drive. Again, just a picture of the condition of the house. The house was built in 1965, actually not too sound. The first task I did for Mr. Speck was back in 2016 that we actually replaced the leach field. This has been a family piece of the property. They've been there since the 70s. So there was a lot of discussion on whether or not they wanted to keep the existing house and renovate it, or they wanted to redo the house. We're now in 2019, but in 2016 we did install a brand new leach field for the house. Kind of an overview, it's a very topography challenged site, very steep, very nice mature trees on it. Mr. Speck is actually an architect, so I am pulling my hair out, making sure every lump is located, every tree was located, part of the ethics criteria. This is kind of a picture of the parking lot looking down. Unfortunately, you can see some nice flat area over here, which will kind of go into the view. Again, looking at the lake up at the house, you see we're really at the edge of the cliff. Then you come down to the bottom of the stairs. This is the flat portion right here. All these kind of aspects go into play on how the architects of this respect actually work. This design is house into play. Conducted a full boundary survey by our licensed land surveyor, Dave Collier. We actually found there are numerous encroachments to the butter, so we're kind of getting encroached on that side. Right now, the current setback is 2 feet, and that incorporates the entire side of the house. Butter, so overall, again, we're looking at going from the 15.2 to the 10.3, about 5 feet. Again, going back to the photograph that we showed, and I have another slide on the other side. And so we'll be about 59 feet overall.
Building to building?
A new house, yep, it's gonna be still a 2-bedroom home.
Oh,
Again,
no,
we're going
you
from
mentioned 59 feet.
59 feet would be the distance between the new addition to the
Building to building.
building to building.
Thank you.
Which is relevant, you know, again, as the former building inspector and being a code guy, you know, we're looking at fire separation. It was important we had to go back out, later on this fall, we just had to up the house and shit. Important to demonstrate that setback from the elbow room. Again, that little photo that we showed of the bottom of the stairs, you know, the architects did a great job of kind of incorporating a little breezeway down the stairs. The deck in the front is getting pushed back just a little bit. Again, it does have a piece of exposed ledge in his house. There's a nice flat section over here, so again, we're really trying to work with the aspects of topography feet. He's really into the trees, hardwoods, he's really limiting the amount of tree cutting and measure to get. And again, we're going from a two-bedroom home that's 722 square feet, to a new home that's 1,112 square feet. So again, we're not getting enormous, but I did want to do.
Very modest, 1,100.
Yes, it is very modest, and what I wanted to do is at least read into the record his letter. Again, he wasn't able to make it tonight. He lives down in Boston. Again, Madam Chair, please accept my letter explaining my reasons for requesting the setback variance for our property at 65 Lakeview Drive. Our goal is to reconstruct our dilapidated cabin on the property, replacing it with a new high-quality vacation house of slightly larger size. I have designed the house with the support of my old professor, Jeremiah Ekman of Boston. For what it's worth, I am trained as an architect, but work as a town planner, so I had to do town planning abilities all the time and how we look for variance. Often helping cities like Lowell and Newburyport with their zoning. I am sorry that I have missed today's hearing. We have a project out of town, but I hope this letter will help in his absence. Before getting into the details of the request, I wanted to highlight the letter submitted by our neighbors, which I'll go into next. Again, they did have great support letter from the neighbor who is the variance encroachment on. So again, hopefully you'll support the variance for the following reasons. The flat buildable area of the lot is very small, so we're really just working in that little flat area for the building construction. The ledge, again, we do have a ledge out there. It cuts the end across the limits of the south of the lot, although the proposed house is quite small with a footprint of about 1,000 square feet. Placing it further to the north would be considerable regrading. Again, if you look right in here, we tried to go in that way with this footprint. Quite a drop off. We'd like to make the footprint of the house smaller by putting the bedrooms upstairs. That was one of his answers, but again, they're getting older. They wanted to try to stick with a one-story type living environment, not requiring stairs as they age. Again, this is a family piece that they've had since the 70s, so again, I'll read the abutters letter, but they've all grown up together for the last 40 years, so again, it's quite a family component. Again, a key that he wants to specify is the house is difficult to see from the lake and from the road. When I go out there, I actually miss it. I don't know. The other photograph we had on the other side, it's hidden pretty well up in the woods. And again, it's not really visible from the abuttings. The main body of the house maintains the minimum setback, and the way they actually designed it, that really only 10 by 12 section within that 20-foot setback. Yeah, that wraps around. But in the garden, the new house would be a 20-foot setback, a 20 small section of 10 feet. So they did try to minimize as much as they could in their design footprint to maintain that setback. Again, we're taking a long wall about 15 feet from the property line, replacing it with 10-foot, and with the 10-foot property line longer to 20 feet. Even in this location, the house maintains a distance, again, we stated 59 feet from the Catelli's piece next door. Distance. And incidentally, it's worth noting that our neighbor to the north has accidentally encroached more than 5 feet of property line on our shale lines with both landscaping and our septic system as a courtesy. So being a good neighbor, we worked with him a couple years ago. We actually haven't. So again, everyone out there in this section of the lake are being good stewards working together. And again, as this last statement, as a town planner, you can see 4 reasons why you may be reluctant to grant the variance. 1, an impacted neighbor disapproves. Again, we don't have that situation. It creates life safety issues. Again, we're taking a substandard 1963 construction, building a code house, meeting the IBC building codes. or it's going to lower the value of the property. Again, this will be a great increase for the abutting property values. Again, he's kind of going through the whole steps, but in his own letter. And it establishes a precedent of highly visible example. This project does not satisfy any of those criteria. Is approved by its impacted neighbor, maintains a safety distance from the house, will raise the value of the property, and essentially is invisible and safe. More importantly, the variance will allow us to transform our dilapidated cabin into a valuable new house without substantial regrading and tree removal, both of which would lower the value of the property and potentially impact the water quality of the lake. Again, he's very conscious of the importance of water quality on the lake. And I'm hopeful that all of these factors together will allow us to support the variance requested. And again, I'm grateful for considering this letter. Jeff Speck, and again, he's got quite a bunch of initials after his name. I think because you guys did have a lot of that in your package, because we got that after we had submitted and we were able to put that on top. The other letter I wanted to kind of bring up was the neighbor. So you should have the letter dated September 27th from the Coltoys Trust. They're out of Massachusetts, but so friends, we, Richard, Jane, James, and Kevin Cotelli are the trustees of the Cotelli Trust, which owns 63 Lakeview Drive, next door to 65 Lakeview Drive, owned by Scott and Jeff Speck. We are writing this regarding the Speck's request for the variance on the side setback along our property. We have owned our cabin on Pawtucket Lake since 1965. The Specks have been in our neighbors since the early 1970s. We have enjoyed watching the Speck boys grow up into our now admittedly middle-aged men. The Specks have always been good neighbors and good friends, and for almost half a century, we have always been willing to help each other out. We took a great interest in Jeff Speck's desire to upgrade their 1960s cabin into something more permanent. Jeff brought it to my attention on how his proposed design maintains a 10-foot setback from our shared property line rather than the required distance of 20. Of interest is the fact that the current cabin already violates the requirement sitting about 15 feet. So again, we're only really looking for a 5-foot relief. We have reviewed the design carefully and are writing to say that we are completely supportive of the requested variance. The house is quite attractive and will add value to our property. We also recognize the hardship of the site placed on the design, specifically the small size of the flat area. Again, as stated before, we're really working with a pretty flat envelope without really bulldozing and destroying that nice character. The current cabin encroachment towards our property is necessary if the Specs are to avoid considerable regrading and tree removal. The house is quite small, less than 1,400 square feet, so they are not overbuilding the site. We agree that saving trees is the right approach. The wing of the house that reaches towards our property is only 10 feet wide with no windows facing in our direction. With this letter, we ask you accept the Specs request for a variance to the 20-foot setback requirement. Ours is the only property impacted by their design, which is largely hidden by trees from both the roads and the lake. Clearly, there's no other party who could claim to be conventionally by this proposal. We hope this letter is helpful, and we would have the opportunity to commute further if there's any questions. Signed by Dick, Richard, Coltoy, and then we have his email, and they all signed. So, I guess at this point, I don't know what the best procedure. If you wanted to go through the 5 criteria, or maybe just take a few questions at this time. Again, this is not a time-sensitive project to us. The next step, based on a blessing of this board for approval, we would finalize the house plans. Part of our scope is to complete the shoreline application. Again, we've already done a brand-new septic, which has been installed in 2016.
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, so it was installed in 2016. Again, he was going back since 2016 to now, he was going back and forth whether or not they wanted to save the camp or really rebuild. And And I think it was more of something that they grew up in the 70s, and they really wanted to keep that, but I think, you know, looking at the crack block and just the heating of the whole home and having something permanent down the road that met code, I think it was more important to them to tear it down and rebuild.
So do any members of the board have questions?
I assume you got all the water management as part of the plan, or will be part of it.
Will be part of, yeah. I mean, it's, luckily, if you look at, the approved septic plan, that line right there, the back of the house is the 150-foot reference line. So, I mean, really, we're not into the 50-foot reference line for structures. We're not even into the 100-foot. So we're really minimal as far as, I mean, this is probably one of the best wooded lots I've ever worked on Pawtucket. As you all know, a lot of these people have lawns up to the edge. He has me actually locating more trees for him, and he wants to thin it accordingly. He wants to keep that nice stand of trees, and he wants me to locate rocks, and it's been quite a project on my end.
What I failed to say was rainwater management.
Yep, yeah, so when you look at the Shoreline Protection Act, and you look at the impervious covers and all that, this is probably one of the best lots for the smallest amount of impervious cover. So, again, we're not getting over that 25 to 30% impervious cover warranting a stormwater management plan, but we do take that into consideration. Typically, what we're doing is what the state recommends is infiltration drip edges, and they've kind of revised that detail a little bit. So we are pretty cognizant of the DES stormwater rules, pretty much most of what I do for work nowadays.
Are there more questions? Are you good? Kevin?
I am good.
So is there anyone present who wishes to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone present who wishes to speak in opposition? I think there's only two people from Trafford County Planning Commission here, so I guess not. So I guess at this point, we would ask you if you want us to continue, in which case we would want you to go through the 5 criteria, because that's what we vote on.
Yeah, I think with the essence of the Christmas spirit, I'll continue. Again, you know, we look at the 5 criteria, and so we look at, you know, the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. You know, the new house would be code compliant and improve safety over the existing home. I mean, that's a key component of this project. Again, it's trying to fit something in that footprint that's code compliant for life safety. So I think that's a key variance of the public interest, that we're being code compliant. A residential 2-bedroom home exists and will remain. So again, we're doing a 1-for-1. We're not upgrading to a 4-bedroom. So the public interest, we're keeping the same aspect of a 2-bedroom home. And then the proposed house fits within the current footprint of the land. You know, take it hands off to the architects. I met Jeff up there, and an architect and the architect associate, and they had me actually pick up every little flat spot to within sub-meter type accuracies, because they wanted to make sure this thing really fit. So there was a lot of architectural thought process putting into really working with the characteristics of the land. So then we look at this, the spirit of ordinances observed. The reduction in the setback is only 5 feet from the current condition. Again, you know, based on basic building codes. If we had to replace the home, we could replace it, you know, within that 15-foot setback. But really, to try to make that breezeway work, you know, make the breezeway work with the contours and get some type of home that actually fit. They really did a great job of getting that envelope to fit in there. So again, the spirit of the ordinance is observed. The distance, again, to reiterate, the distance between the 2 homes is 59 feet. And again, we read into the record the abutter support on the project. Again, this is a good family niche out here. The variance neither alters the essential character of the locality or threatens the public safety, health, and welfare. I think that's key, is that, we're not jeopardizing any other public threats. There's no issues with particularly the lake and distances to the lake. There's a great wooded buffer that will be maintained all the way through the project. And the main body of the house maintains the 20-foot setback. So that's key, is when you look at this jog of the 10 feet, the main part of the house is still maintaining the 20-foot. It's only this little bump out that they had to do for mechanical room, and then we had to do a bulkhead to get out the back. So again, this is a on-grade type home with a mechanical room down below for their heating and cooling systems. And then again, so it's only really the proposed 10 by 10 and then the deck that is actually within that one setback. So it's, again, we're not pushing a full structure within 10 feet of the property line. Substantial justice is done. The new construction, new house is a reasonable use of the property. Again, we're replacing a 2-bedroom with a 2-bedroom. The lot is typical of size and neighboring properties. So again, when you look at, our lot with all the other abutting lots on that subdivision portion, they're all about that same size. Again, this is a 0.65 acre parcel out there. Denial of the variance prevents reasonable use of the property. Again, if the variance was denied, we'd really have to reconfigure. It would be more earth disturbance, more tree cutting, and it would be a shame to have to take more of the well-established growth that's out there. The value of the surrounding properties are not diminished. The use of the property will remain the same. So again, it's a 2-bedroom for a 2-bedroom. We're not trying to put any type of commercial development in there. The new house will enhance the property values of the surrounding homes. I think we'll see a substantial increase in property values with this type of new home values compared to a 1963 home. The current proposed homes are not visible from the road. Again, it's a key thing to be recognized that, again, the work that we're doing is kind of hidden away both from the lake and from the street. Section 5, little enforcement of provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship. The special conditions, no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance. And due to the lot configuration and the topography of the special conditions exists, preventing any reconstruction of the property without relief. Again, I think that's a key component why we're here today. The lot is the issue as far as trying to configure something on the lot. Again, the architects did a great job of the A-frame style with a breezeway coming off, the bulkhead with the mechanical room to kind of fit in with what Mother Nature gave us. And the proposed use is a reasonable one. Again, reiterating that it's a current 2-bedroom home and we're replacing it with a new 2-bedroom home. We already have an approved septic system on there. And again, strict enforcement, item B, due to the current site conditions, the strict enforcement of the ordinance would not allow the reconstruction of new home without substantial regrading and tree removal. Thank you.
Thank you. So, let me just quickly summarize that the application is for really a simple variance from Article 2C2 of the zoning ordinance to permit a setback that is 10.3 feet where 20 feet is required. Everyone agree with that? Okay, then, if you don't disagree, Mr. Chris, I'm going to declare the public hearing portion closed. Going. Okay. Now it's up to the board. Does anyone have anything they wish to say about this application? Or we can go-
I personally like what they're doing, so.
It's nice to see the detail that we got with this application. Not everybody can afford you, but it makes it easy for us to see what you're doing, and I agree with Kevin. It seems like the sensible thing to do, so. And it's really, it's not meeting its own setback, but it's more than meeting the two setbacks more than meet the distance from the other house, so there's really no impact to them, and they're totally in favor of it. Probably help their property values. So I guess I would anticipate a motion. Do you want to do it,
Would you
Kevin?
like me to do it, or would you like to practice?
No, go for it. So I move that case 19-013-VA, application from Jeff Speck for a variance request from Article 2, C2 of the Nottingham Zoning Ordinance to permit the reconstruction of a new house where the existing house setback is 15.2 feet, and the new house will be set back 10.3 feet, where 20 feet setback is required. Property is located at 65 Lakeview Drive in Nottingham, New Hampshire, and is identified as tax map 71, lot 37.
Is there a second?
And the motion was to approve?
Is the motion to approve?
Oh, motion to approve, yes.
I second.
Okay, moving on to the 5 criteria. A motion has been made and seconded to approve the application from Jeff Speck for a setback variance. The 5 criteria, the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. All those who agree, raise your right hand. There's no one to oppose. The spirit of the ordinance is observed. All those who agree, raise your right hand.
I agree.
Substantial justice is done. All those who agree, raise your right hand.
I do.
The values of the surrounding properties are not diminished. All those who agree, raise your right hand. And number 5, literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship. And the first one, unnecessary hardship, means that owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property. All those who agree, raise your right hand.
I do.
And the proposed use is a reasonable one. Those who agree, raise your right hand. That's 2, not B. Thank you. And then I think you have a unanimous decision.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Chris.
You all have a happy holiday.
You too. Thank you. So the next item on our agenda is staff board members update. Do you have anything to update us on, Joanna?
In your binders
Mm-hmm.
is the proposed 2020 application public hearing agenda or schedule. Sent that out to the board as well. Kind of late to be posting this, but I was out for a month, so
That's all right.
anybody have a problem with it?
No, I trust you've run it by all the election dates.
Yes.
Okay. Does not conflict even with testing the vote count machine? No, because we,
No, because we meet on the third
Third,
meeting of the month, and third Tuesday of the month.
yep.
If y'all approve, then I will post this.
So do we need a motion for that?
Not necessarily a motion, but I just need to know that y'all.
I approve of it. Do any other board members have any comments or
Agree.
disagreements?
I didn't get anything from anybody in email.
You had a conflict of dates at one time, and that's been resolved.
I think I sent you all the planning board agenda at first, and that was the conflict that you noticed, right?
I see, okay.
And you're not on the planning board. How lucky.
Yeah, these dates are fine by me.
Okay. All right, so everybody agrees?
Yep, I think we're
So,
in agreement.
post, And then I also, you had requested the policy on the class 5 roads to be put in the binder, so those are in there.
Yeah, and for a change tonight, we did not have a road hearing.
Right. That's it for now. Again, keep an eye on your emails because we do have more cases coming. Mr. Bonzer may be gone the majority of the winter, so please definitely keep an eye out for it being needed, okay? I think that's all.
So can I ask you to email us this policy, this road? Because even though it's in here,
Yep.
I can't take this home.
You can take it out of your binder if you want, as long as you bring it every meeting. If you
No, I'd rather you email it to me. That way
Yeah.
I'm not responsible for remembering to bring it back.
Absolutely, I'll send you the link. It's
I might
on the,
flunk that.
The zoning board page.
Thank you.
So
Oh, there's a
will
link,
this be
okay.
emailed to us or posted?
I will email you the link to the post.
Okay.
It's on the town website. Do we have anything else under updating staff, board members?
Can you introduce our
Please do.
planner and- Okay, so Stephanie Casella is our planner that the planning board has hired.
And they loan her to us?
Yes, they loaned her to you guys tonight, yeah. And then Jen says, what is your official title?
Executive Director
Okay, Executive Director
at Stratford Regional.
from Stratford Regional, yeah.
Executive Director of what?
Stratford Regional Planning.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So they were here for your case tonight, but also kind of observing how our board runs things. So, okay.
So they are the ones who sent out this letter about the case that we continued. So we now have their expertise when we need it.
Yes. I think that's all.
We do have some, we have minutes.
Yeah.
All right, that's okay.
Do you want to do the
You
draft
have to
minutes?
defer.
No, this is a second, why would we need to defer it? Were you at this meeting? Yes?
No.
Oh, no. I'm the only one who can vote on it, huh? There's a vote of one count?
You can
For minutes?
vote, even if you weren't at the meeting, you can still vote on the minutes.
Yeah, but you weren't, you,
Usually abstain.
Not
I
for
would
the zoning
abstain.
board, not for the board.
How can you know-
Robert's rules.
how could-
Right, sorry,
what rules?
Roberts.
We don't use Robert's
No,
rules.
that's what I just said, you're not using
No.
Robert's rules.
Because you wouldn't know what happened if you weren't here, so what's the point of you voting?
My argument, but-
Yeah. So, since I'm the only person who was present at the meeting who's also present tonight, I suppose we should postpone it. Okay? Can you put this on next month's agenda, please? And may I take this home with me?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any further business?
No, Madam Chair, I do not.
Then I will entertain a motion to finalize this meeting.
I would like to make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Adjourn.
Adjourn this meeting, thank you.
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded to adjourn this meeting. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed? The meeting is adjourned.